September 6, 29 AD. The Muslim army was dying. 3,000 men, sent north to the Byzantine frontier near the village of Muta in what is today southern Jordan, had just watched their third commander fall in less than an hour. Zayd ibn Haritha, the Prophet's adopted son and the expedition's appointed leader, was dead. Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, the Prophet's cousin, a man so beloved that his death would be mourned in Medina for days, was dead, both arms cut off before the final blow, his body found with over 90 wounds. Abdullah ibn Rawaha, the third commander in the succession Muhammad had personally appointed before the army left Medina, was dead. The Byzantine force opposing them numbered somewhere between 10,000 and 100,000 depending on which source you read. Al-Walid says 100,000, which modern historians treat as a significant exaggeration but which communicates the essential reality that the Muslims were facing a force of overwhelming numerical superiority. Professional Byzantine soldiers and their Arab Ghassanid allies, on ground of their choosing, with equipment that outclassed the Muslim army in almost every material respect. 3 commanders dead. No orders from Medina. No reinforcements coming. No plan that the army's surviving senior men could agree on. A soldier picked up the Prophet's banner from where Ja'far had dropped it and held it up. He didn't know what to do with it. He just knew it couldn't touch the ground. Then a voice cut through the noise. "Give me the banner." Khalid ibn al-Walid had been a Muslim for less than 6 months. He had never commanded a Muslim army. He had no authorization from the Prophet to take command. He had no rank in the Muslim military hierarchy that gave him the right to give orders to men who had been Muslim for years while he had spent most of those years trying to kill them. None of that mattered. He took the banner. He assessed what he had. And then he did something that no one on that battlefield, not the surviving Muslim commanders, not the Byzantine generals watching from across the field, expected him to do. He saved the army. Khalid ibn al-Walid had been Muslim for less than 6 months when he walked into his first battle on the Muslim side. Outnumbered 10 to 1, 3 commanders already dead, no authorization to lead. What happened next is why the Prophet called him the Sword of God. Subscribe, like the video, and let's get into it. The months between Khalid's conversion in early 629 AD and the expedition to Muta in September of the same year were not idle months. Khalid had entered a community that was simultaneously welcoming him and watching him. This is the natural dynamic of any organization that receives a defector from the other side. The conversion is accepted, the welcome is genuine, but the watching is real. Men who had fought alongside Khalid at Uhud, who had seen what he could do to a Muslim army when he was pointed in the other direction, were now expected to take orders from him. Men who had lost brothers and fathers to his cavalry charges were now his brothers in faith. The transition was not frictionless. Al-Walid records several incidents from this period that illuminate the particular tension of Khalid's position. He was given no immediate command. He trained with the Muslim forces, participated in the smaller expeditions of this period, demonstrated his commitment through action rather than declaration. He was, by every account, completely sincere in his conversion, not a political calculation, not a strategic defection timed to the obvious direction of events, but a genuine religious and intellectual conviction that had been building for years. But conviction is invisible. Actions are not. He had one opportunity to prove himself before Muta, a smaller engagement near Mecca in the period between his conversion and the expedition north. He performed exactly as anyone who had watched him at Uhud would have predicted. Precise, aggressive, effective. The kind of performance that makes the men around you stop watching you with wariness and start watching you with something closer to relief. Muhammad watched all of it. Said little publicly. Filed everything away. Then, in late 629 AD, he organized an expedition to the Byzantine frontier. The immediate cause was the killing of a Muslim envoy, Harith ibn Umar al-Azdi, by the Ghassanid governor Shurabil ibn Amr at Muta. Killing an envoy was, in the diplomatic conventions of the ancient world, an act of war so unambiguous that it required a military response. Muhammad sent 3,000 men north with a specific chain of command. Zayd ibn Haritha first. If Zayd falls, Ja'far ibn Abi Talib. If Ja'far falls, Abdullah ibn Rawaha. If Abdullah falls, and this is the part that the sources record with particular care, then the army should choose among themselves. Khalid was in the expedition. Not as a commander. As a soldier. If all 3 fall, one of the men asked Muhammad before they left, "What then?" "Then God will appoint for them whoever He wills," Muhammad said. The Muslim army marched north through the Hijaz and into the territory of what is today Jordan. 3,000 men moving through increasingly unfamiliar terrain, the landscape shifting from the desert they knew to the more temperate hills of the Levantine frontier. At Man, south of the Dead Sea, the first intelligence reached them. The Byzantine response to their expedition was not the Ghassanid local force they had expected. Heraclius, the Byzantine emperor who had just completed his epic reconquest of Syria and Palestine from the Persians and was at the peak of his military confidence, had sent a substantial force under his brother Theodore. The Ghassanid Arab allies under Shurabil ibn Ammar had joined them. The numbers reported to the Muslim scouts were overwhelming. The army stopped at Man for 2 days. The debate that followed is recorded in detail by al-Walid, and it is one of the more revealing moments in early Islamic military history because it shows exactly how unusual Khalid's thinking was even at this stage, when he had no authority to lead. The majority position among the senior commanders was straightforward: send a messenger back to Muhammad, report the situation, wait for orders. The force they were facing was far larger than anything they had been sent to fight. Discretion was not cowardice. It was military common sense. Abdullah ibn Roha, the poet and third in the chain of command, stood up and gave a speech that al-Waqidi records at length, the substance of which was that the Muslim army had not come this distance for numerical advantage. They had come for one of two things: victory or martyrdom. Both were acceptable outcomes. Neither required them to go back. The army voted with Abdullah ibn Roha. They marched north. Khalid rode with them, saying little. He was studying the terrain. At the village of Muta, on a plain near the banks of the Wadi al-Mujib, the Byzantine and Ghassanid force was waiting. The battle began badly and got worse quickly. Zayd ibn Haritha advanced the Muslim army with the particular courage of a man who understood that the numbers were against him and had decided that this was not the most important fact about the situation. He fought until he was surrounded and killed. Al-Waqidi records that he died holding the Prophet's banner, refusing to drop it. Jafar ibn Abi Talib took the banner. He was, by multiple accounts, one of the most physically impressive men in the early Muslim community: tall, striking, a man whose presence in battle had the particular quality of someone who makes those around him believe that things are going better than the numbers suggest. He fought with the same refusal to acknowledge the mathematics of the situation. When his right arm was cut off by a Byzantine sword, he transferred the banner to his left. When his left arm was cut off, he held the banner with the stumps of both arms until he fell. He was 33 years old. Abdullah ibn Raha took the banner. He hesitated, just for a moment, a human moment of ordinary fear in an extraordinary situation, which al-Waqidi records with the honesty of a historian who understood that the truth of a man is in his moments of weakness as much as his moments of strength. Then he advanced. He was killed within the hour. 3 commanders in less than an hour. The Muslim army was not routed. These were men of genuine conviction fighting for something they believed in completely, but the situation was, by any objective military assessment, critical. The Byzantine force was pressing. The Muslim line was holding but not advancing. There was no plan. Thabit ibn Arkam picked up the banner from where Abdullah had fallen and looked around for the most senior man he could find. He found Khalid. "Take this," Thabit said. "You are more deserving of it than I am," Khalid said. "You are older in Islam." "Take it," Thabit said. "You know war better than I do." This exchange, preserved by al-Waqidi, is one of the most important moments in the episode because it shows 2 things simultaneously: Khalid's genuine humility before men who had been Muslim longer than he had, and Thabit's recognition that what the army needed at this moment was not seniority in faith but competence in battle. Khalid took the banner. He had approximately 30 minutes, by most reconstructions of the timeline, to assess what he had and decide what to do with it. What he had: 3,000 men, tired, facing a force multiple times their number, on open ground where the Byzantine cavalry and infantry had clear advantages, with no possibility of reinforcement and no natural defensive position within immediate reach. What he did not attack. He did not retreat in panic. He reorganized. Al-Waqidi records the specific tactical decisions Khalid made in those 30 minutes with the detail of a chronicler who had spoken to men who were there. He repositioned the wings, moved the right wing to the left and the left wing to the right, brought forward units that had been held in reserve, shuffled the front line so that fresh faces were forward and the men who had been fighting longest were pulled back. The Byzantine commanders, seeing the movement in the Muslim lines, hesitated, interpreting the reorganization as the beginning of a new and possibly different kind of assault, uncertain what they were now facing. That hesitation bought Khalid the space he needed. He did not try to win. He tried to survive. The reorganized Muslim army pushed forward. Not in a full assault but in a controlled aggressive advance that gave the impression of an army that had resources it had not yet deployed. The Byzantines, cautious in the way that numerically superior forces often are when they cannot read what the enemy is doing, did not press their advantage with full commitment. Khalid used that caution. He fought through the afternoon, changing his sword multiple times as blades broke or dulled, the sources recording that he broke 9 swords at Muta as he had at Uhud, a detail that speaks to the intensity of his personal engagement in the fighting. He held the line where it needed to be held, created pressure where the Byzantine line was thinnest, kept the army coherent and moving when coherence and movement were the only things standing between 3,000 men and complete destruction. Then as the light began to fail, he began the withdrawal. Not a rout. Not a panicked flight. A controlled, staged withdrawal, units pulling back in sequence, the rear covered, the formation maintained. The Byzantine pursuit met with enough organized resistance that the pursuit never turned into the pursuit of a broken army. The Muslim army reached safety with the majority of its men intact. 3,000 had gone north. The sources differ on the exact casualties but agree on the essential fact. The army came back. It came back without the 3 commanders the Prophet had appointed. It came back having failed to defeat the Byzantine force it had been sent to confront. But it came back. In the history of early Islamic military campaigns, Muta is sometimes recorded as a defeat. Khalid ibn al-Walid for the rest of his life, disagreed with that characterization. "I broke 9 swords, he said, according to a tradition recorded by al-Waqidi. Only a flat piece of Yemeni iron remained in my hand at the end. That is not a defeat. That is what staying looks like." January 630 AD. 4 months after Muta. The political situation in Arabia had shifted in ways that made what happened next both inevitable and staggering in its speed. The Quraysh had violated the Treaty of Hudaybiyah by supporting an attack on a tribe allied with the Muslims. Muhammad used the violation as the grounds to march on Mecca with 10,000 men, the largest Muslim army assembled to that point. Khalid commanded the right wing. The plan was to enter Mecca from multiple directions simultaneously, minimizing resistance by making resistance seem futile. Muhammad's explicit instruction was to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. Mecca was to be taken, not destroyed. Most of the city submitted without fighting. The commanders entering from other directions encountered no resistance. Khalid's column encountered resistance. A group of Quraysh warriors under Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl, the son of the Abu Jahl who had died at Badr, a man with significant personal reasons to resist, met Khalid's force at the southern approach to the city. The engagement was brief and completely one-sided. Khalid's force broke through, killing approximately 12 to 28 men depending on the source, and the resistance collapsed. Khalid entered Mecca as a Muslim conqueror. He had left it less than a year earlier as the city's most celebrated warrior, having converted to the religion the city had spent 2 decades trying to destroy. He rode through streets he had grown up in, past buildings where he had trained and competed and attended the councils where the opposition to Muhammad had been organized. He rode past the house where his father al-Walid ibn al-Mughira had sat in his courtyard receiving visitors and shaping the political decisions of the Quraysh. He rode to the Kaaba. Muhammad destroyed the idols personally, going around the Kaaba striking each one with his staff, reciting the Quranic verse, "Truth has come and falsehood has perished. Indeed, falsehood is bound to perish." The 360 idols that had organized the economic and religious life of Mecca for generations fell one by one. Khalid watched. He had grown up in the world those idols represented. He had been trained by the clan whose purpose was to defend that world. He had fought for that world at Uhud with everything he had. He watched the last idol fall and said nothing that the sources record. But al-Waqidi notes, in a passage that seems almost incidental but carries enormous weight, that Khalid was seen to be weeping. Not from grief. From something that has no simple name, the particular emotion of someone watching the world they were built for end and understanding, completely and without reservation, that it needed to end. The conquest of Mecca was followed almost immediately by the Battle of Hunain, January 630 AD, 2 weeks after the city's fall. The Hawazin and Thaqif confederacy, alarmed by the Muslim conquest of Mecca and the momentum it represented, assembled a large force in the valley of Hunain east of Mecca. Muhammad marched with 12,000 men, the largest Muslim force yet, now augmented by recent Meccan converts including many former enemies. The battle nearly became a catastrophe. The Hawazin commander Malik ibn Awf had positioned his entire force, warriors, women, children, livestock, in the hills above the valley, with strict orders to begin the engagement with a mass dawn ambush before the Muslim army could deploy. The Muslim vanguard, advancing confidently in the half-light of early morning with the particular overconfidence of an army that had just taken the most important city in Arabia without serious resistance, walked directly into it. The ambush broke the Muslim vanguard. Men who had been fighting for God with complete conviction 2 weeks earlier ran. The rout was sudden and total. Al-Walid describes men running past Muhammad himself, who stood his ground on his white mule, calling after them. "Where are you going? Come back. I am the prophet of God. I am Muhammad ibn Abdullah." Most kept running. A corps of men stayed, including Khalid on the right wing, who had not been caught in the initial ambush and whose position gave him a clear view of what was happening and what needed to happen next. He did not wait for orders. He held the right wing together, used the terrain to anchor his position, and began creating enough pressure on the Hawazin left flank to slow their advance and buy time for the broken Muslim vanguard to stop running, turn around and remember what they were fighting for. It worked. The Muslim army reformed around the men who had held. The tide turned. The Hawazin force, which had been pressing its advantage, suddenly found itself facing a reorganized Muslim army with Khalid's intact cavalry on one flank and a reformed center that had rediscovered its conviction. The battle that had opened as a Muslim catastrophe ended as a Muslim victory. Muhammad, afterward, distributed the spoils of Hunain. He gave generous shares to the recently converted Meccans, men who had been enemies weeks earlier, in a deliberate political act designed to bind them to the new order. Some of the Ansar, the original Medinan Muslims, were privately hurt that recent converts received more than they did. Khalid received his share. He said nothing about the distribution. But that night, according to a tradition recorded by Ibn Sa'd, he sat alone outside the camp for a long time before returning to his tent. A man who had been nearby asked him what he was thinking. "I am thinking," Khalid said, "that I have not yet done enough to balance what I did before." "You broke 9 swords at Muta," the man said. "Yes," Khalid said. "And before that I broke 9 swords at Uhud on the other side. The accounting is not finished." He lay down and slept. 3 months later, Abu Bakr would send him to Iraq, and the accounting would begin in earnest.